Hi, it's Vicky. So this is a quick video of me colouring in the Twinkle Twinkle by Annabele Spenceley and Crafter's Companion. I'm using my Memento Jet Black to stamp the image. It's a an alcohol-proof ink rather. It's a water-based ink. So I can use my tri-blends with it. I've also mounted the stamp into my stamping press, which is a memory keepers one, because I knew I'd probably need to do the image twice to get it quite balanced and nice and crisp, which is what I wanted. And obviously using a press will allow you to do that. The video is sped up to 2x speed, although only when I seem to move bits and bobs can you really tell that. So I used 6 tri-blends for this. As you can see, these are the ones that I used, but bearing in mind every tri-blend pen is actually 3 pens, so it was kind of like I used 18 but without the mess. So the first one I used was the burnt orange, so this was for her hair. I kept putting it upside down as well, which I have no idea why. So the colours in this one are BO1, BO2 and BO4, so it has a light, a mid and a dark shade on each tri-blend. For the hair, I wanted to try and get a good saturation of colour. So what I've done, I colour a couple of different ways with the tri-blends depending on how big of an area I'm doing. So for the hair, I coloured all of it in the light shade to start with. If you can hear what sounds like traffic, it's because the spare room window's open because it's incredibly warm. And every once in a while a truck will go past, so I do apologise about that. You probably can't hear it, it'll just be me imagining that you can. But just in case you can, I apologise in advance. I think I accidentally knocked the table a couple of times as well in the video, so I'll apologise for that one. As I was saying, the video is at 2x speed, although you probably can't tell with the way I'm colouring her hair. It looks like big spaces, but there's actually quite a lot of little fiddly bits with her hair I discovered as I was colouring it. So that's why I don't think there's much more left to get in her hair. So then we'll be moving on to the shading of the hair. I like the burnt orange colour for hair, for redheads. There is an orange blend in the tri-blends, but it's a bit too orange sometimes, I think. Really does, bring out the orange shades a bit too much. So I finished all the light shade, so now I am trying to pick out where I thought the shadowing would be, or the dark shades. So underneath the antlers, behind the headband, underneath the hairline gets done as well, and the little tiny bits that are hidden by her jumpers and her arms. Then once I've done a thin line of the dark shade, I blend that out with the mid shade, so going about halfway across the dark shade and then into the light a little bit, so you should see that it blends into like a nice transition. And then you've got to go back to the lightest shade, just to blend out the mid shade in the same way that you blend out the dark shade. So I'm just going to continue doing that for the hair, but I think, or I hope you'll agree, that it does give a nice variation to the hair doing the blending this way. When I get to her fringe, normally I tend to go from like the top of the hairline and have the flicks be the lightest bit. However, I realised that with a bouffant fringe quite that poofy, it would probably be the top of her hair that would catch the light the most. So I did the tips, like the bottom tips of her hair, the darker shades, and blended upwards with the light. And actually I think that probably worked out better for what I actually wanted, so I was actually remarkably pleased with it, I'm not going to lie. And so just bear with me while I finish doing that bit. You wouldn't think this is 2x speed, would you? I dread to think how long it actually took me to colour this thing, and I thought I did it quite quickly. So that is the hair done. I'll just lift it up a little bit so you guys can see. Next we have her jumper, so I'm doing that in the dark red blend. So tri-blends have a dark red blend and light dark red shades. This is the lighter of the two, which is DR1, DR3 and DR4. Again, this time, because it's a smaller area, I'm going straight into my shading, and it works fine if you do it this way as well. I just think with a larger area you needed to lay down the colour just to give it a bit more alcohol to merge with. So I'm starting with the DR4 on this one and just picking out where I think there'll be darkness. I tend to put at either side of a body, I tend to put the shade, because even the skinniest of people will have a slight rounding on their tummy. It is worth noting as well, because these are alcohol markers, if you lay down the darkest colour and then you just keep going over and over and over it with the lightest colour, it will eventually bleed it out and dilute the colour of the darkest colour, because you add in alcohol. So the way that they're done is they all have pigment in, and the lightest just has the most alcohol into it, and then there's less alcohol in the darker ones. So obviously if you keep adding alcohol to the dark ones, it will eventually dilute the colour down to a lighter shade. So it's important to try not to go over too much of the dark, or you will lose that shading. I also decided, as well as her jumper, to do her headband red as well. In hindsight, looking back on it, I kind of wish I'd done the headband in the green with red dots, just because obviously with it being a redhead, you slightly lose the red in the hairband. You can still see it and it still looks really nice, but I think if I colour her again, I will be doing it the opposite way around, just for making it look a little bit nicer, I think. So you see what I mean? It's just a little bit faded in there. And then decided to use the Alpine Green blend for her skirt. It's probably my favourite greens for Christmas. So this has the AG1, AG3 and AG5. There's the 3 shades in there. Again, this one, the space, I felt I could just start straight away with my darkest shade. So under the layers of her skirt, obviously I did under there. I was trying to decide there, as you could probably tell by the fact that my pen went but didn't quite go. And then underneath the waistband line where it looks gathered, there's lines obviously on the actual image. Quite a lot of images will have little lines that kind of give you an indication of where it's probably a bit darker. I've gone on to the mid shade for the next bit, so obviously just going part way through the darkest colour and then pulling that out and going another third of the way down again. So theoretically you should be about 2/3 of the way down when you've done your mid colour, roughly. For the ruffles, I think most of it I just completely coloured in. I think there's a tiny bit I left to the light, to put the light over the top of it, because obviously the underside of the skirt probably wouldn't get as much light, so it would still be darker in general. And then it was onto the lighter shade. And pull that out. The lighter shade is quite a bit lighter, so it's a case of blend, 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 blend to pull out the colour so that it has a nice even blend on there. If you could hear that squeak, that's just the lift in the apartment building as well. I have no idea why it's so squeaky, but hey ho. Just if you could hear a squeak, it's not me, I promise. I am not a mouse. The next one I'm going to, and that was me remembering again that I needed to colour the little bubbles on the top of a hat as well, hairband even. I then used the earth brown shades, I think that's the pen that I've got out now, for the little antlers. So that's EB1, EB2 and EB3. These just take a quick minute to colour, so that's not too bad. Again, darker at the bottom and lighter at the top was pretty much where I went with those. So just bear with me 2 minutes while I colour those ones in. I really do like the earth brown. It's probably one of my favourite browns. There's quite a few in the set. But they are lovely. And they just make a nice blend, I think. A nice consistent blend. The colours are enough different that you can see the difference, but not so much that it's hard to actually blend them. Then for her skin, she's a redhead, so she couldn't really be anything but pale. So I've gone with the Fair Skin blend, which is the FS6, FS7 and FS8. Her hands, I just coloured them all in the 8, in the darker option. They're so tiny, there wasn't really much room for blending, and it just makes it stand out. So with faces, they kind of get treated like a sphere. So I tend to go around the outside with the darker colour and then blend towards the centre where the nose would be lighter on a face in general, because obviously it is like a sphere. She's only got a little face, so it doesn't take much effort to colour that in. And then obviously her legs, I could have had her in tights, but I think I just decided I quite liked the idea that her legs were brave in the cold, and she'd be inside. She's got fairy lights, I'm assuming she's doing the tree. So just underneath the skirt for the darkest, and then worked my way down to the lightest for those. But like I say, that was a quick bit to colour in. And then for her shoes, I went with Ice Grey Shades, which is IG6, IG8 and IG9. There is an Ice Grey blends as well in the tri-blends, which are slightly lighter ones, but I wanted her shoes to be quite dark, which is why I went with these. Again, it's just a really small area, so I decided the light would be coming from the right, and that's how I went with that. I'm not going to lie, I'm not convinced that necessarily where I decide to put the shade is the perfect place, but I think it looks like a nice image when it's done, so I think that's the best you can do. It's one of those things I think I need to practice, working on my light sources and that part of it, but I do think it looks nice, so I'm quite pleased with the way it turns out. As long as I've got the blends in there, I'm in general quite content when I'm doing these. And that, oh nope, there's the fairy lights. So this was just a Dove Crafts gold marker that I had. I got a little set of metallic markers from Wilkinson's, I think, a couple of years ago. So I found these in my drawer, and I thought it'd be quite nice to just do her little fairy lights or garland in the gold. I thought that would be quite nice. So I've just, I think there I'm just colouring the dot sections in, and then the little stars. Because of the kind of marker it is, it does kind of cover even the ink a little bit, like the ink doesn't show through it. I think it's a very opaque metallic marker, but what can you do? And so I just tried to stay inside it and hope for the best, but now it really is done, I promise. So yeah, that's it. Hope you've enjoyed the colouring video. I will be making this into a card either some point Wednesday or Thursday. Thanks, bye.